Hey there YouTube, welcome back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And in this episode we're going to talk about all things D&D. Some stuff old, some stuff new, some stuff that's old, that's new again. But before we get into that, if you like my video, click the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, click that subscribe button followed by the bell icon and you will be notified every time I upload a brand new video. You know, that subscribe button right there, down there, over to your right. Yep, click that, and then right next to it, that bell icon. Give it a click. There you go. So, where to start? I had a couple of unwanted days off of work due to a medical issue that I'm not going to really get into, so I really didn't want to take the time off. But, you know, sometimes you have to do what you got to do. And it kind of turned out to be a blessing in disguise in some ways. So, back in late spring, Wizards of the Coast announced that they were going to re-release their starter set for 5th edition. I had checked it out, I found it on Amazon, pre-order was like 13 bucks, and I thought, what the heck. So I had ordered it, totally forgot about it, and I figured, you know, if I don't like it, at least you get some cool things with it. You get some officially licensed dice out of it. Normally you get some cool maps and stuff like that you can use for your other RPGs. So it had just wound up. I was off work and this showed up. I totally forgot about it, which was a surprise. Opened it up and started reading through it. And I have to admit, I was very pleased as to what I found. And completing my first scenario out of there, the Temple of Talos, makes me take a total different view onto 5th edition, where Wizards of the Coast is taking D&D, and his 5th edition, I think, is a really good system for solo play. But let's talk about the differences between those two sets for the newest editions. So the first set that came out that everybody is familiar with is this one. And it was much anticipated, and I ordered it, and I really couldn't get into it. It had a cool adventure scenario that came with it, but the thing that I didn't like that really turned me off from it, that's the essential to any RPG game, is your imagination. Your imagination to detail and create a character to the way that you really want to play your character. So when they give you these already pre-filled out character sheets and their background stories and everything else with them, well, it takes something away from the role-playing game experience. It takes away that ability to be able to make a character that I imagine in my imagination for my game and to bring it to life. So it did turn me off, and I read through the rules. I got the gist of advantage and disadvantage and the rolling the 2d20s. Let me just scoot over here a little bit. There we go. And I liked that. There was a lot of things mechanically with 5th edition that I really did like, and I thought that was a huge upgrade to the previous editions. But that's about as far as it went, and the new one that they came out with is excellent. I love it, and I think they should have done that originally, and maybe that's why the re-release, which is this one right here, which is the Essentials Kit. The cool thing about the Essentials Kit, particularly for people just getting into RPG games, whether you're just sick of online gaming and maybe you want some more social interaction and you want to sit around a table with friends and play a game, or perhaps if you're like me, you got time restraints and other things that make it very hard to actually get together with a game group and game. But even if I had that time and everything, I really enjoyed playing solo. And so for me, this was an excellent system, and it gave you a lot, it gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of cool things. So let's talk about that and get into that and talk about some of the other additions of D&D to maybe help you figure it out if you're stuck in that quagmire to where D&D can be very overwhelming with now 5 editions and changes to rules and different mechanics. It could seem overwhelming, particularly if you're just getting into this and you're like, which edition should I use? Which edition is right for me? And why so many editions? Well, I'm going to answer some of them questions. But first thing is, let's jump into the Essential Kit and talk about it. The first thing you're going to notice about the Essential Kit, which I really did enjoy and I like, is they give you your Polyhedral Dice set. So you get your standard set with your D20, your D12, your D8, your D4, your D6, all your standard dice. But the cool thing is they give you 4 D6, all of the same color. And there's a reason behind that, the reason why they do that, which is really cool. Unlike the original starter set, to where you were given pre-designed characters to use that really weren't yours, they came out of somebody else's imagination. And I can see the simplicity behind it, to where if you've never played before, you don't have to worry about making a character and all that. Here's your character sheet and let's just get to gaming. But that's part of the gaming experience, is creating a character, is thinking of the background story of where this character comes from and how it's going to fit into this world. So the cool thing that they really did, I really enjoyed this, and I'm trying to find this book because I got books sprawled out everywhere right here at the moment. Here it is. What is this right here? Here's your rule booklet. Cool thing is, it goes through step by step how to make your own character, choose your own races, buy your own gear. And now, of course, it gives you 4 races to choose from. So, I'm sorry, 5. You get the ability to choose if you wanted to play a bard, a cleric, a fighter, a rogue, or a wizard. And of course, it gives you a sampling of some of the races you can use as well, which is your dwarf, your elf, your halfling, and your human. And of course, to those, depending on the race that you choose, you're going to get some either penalties or bonuses to your ability scores. It all depends, and it all evens out in the end. But I really like that touch. I like that fact that new gamers coming into this get the experience to be able to create your own character, be able to sit down, think about it, and detail it to the way that they imagine it in their minds. Now, besides character creation, it goes over all the rules, explaining combat, explaining everything you really need to know about the game to get you started. It's a very simple read. I love how they laid it out, and the artwork is awesome as well. Very happy. I have to say that they did an excellent job with this particular set, and I'm guessing that's why they re-released it, to maybe iron out some of the bugs and issues they had with the original one. That, well, how do you get older RPG players into playing your new edition and attract new players as well, but keep it simple enough for everybody to really enjoy it? And this set right here really did take care of a lot of those issues and did a really good job at doing it. Now, besides getting a cool rule book, they also give you a really cool adventure book. And there's a total of 6 adventures in here, but that's not to say you could not create more if you wanted to move on from there and basically make some of your own homebrew. But I have to admit, the adventures that they give you in there are they're very well balanced, and they really do. They do really well, particularly with solo as well. I had a lot of fun. I was able to complete that scenario last night, and I was able to do it in about. It was about 4 hours, and I had fun. I had a lot of fun with it. Now, of course, you get your fold-out map, as you would expect. Nothing too fancy. You know, just shows you where you are at in the world. And, of course, it's going to come with the map of the starting village. And with that, you get all your resources that you really need. Of course, there is the tavern to where you can go in and look at the message board for adventures, and of course other NPCs you interact with around the village as you move around. As far as merchants go and talking to them, you also are able to get rumors that will, as the way the game flow works, will lead back to the message board to send you to one of the 6 adventures, which is really cool. That was a nice touch. I liked how they did that, and they said they set it up so a new game master could learn how to run a adventure correctly and get the feel of things, and they did a really good job with that, and particularly with solo. And I'm going to get into using modules a little bit, D&D modules too, how to use those solo and keep them fun. So, with the dice, the Essentials Adventure book, the Player's book, and the map, they also give you this cool little DM screen that comes with a lot of useful information in here that really, I like that. I like the DM screen because it's a quick reference. You can just look at stuff, jump right into it, and you don't have to fumble through pages in order to look for a specific bonus or penalty or maybe the verbiage on a particular rule to be able to see if it applies to that situation you're dealing with currently at that moment. Now, with all that out of the way, they also give you a box. You gotta break up your own cards and put them in here because they come into sheets, which is no big deal. But as you move through these 6 scenarios, you're going to discover magic items. And the other cool thing that I really do like about this, particularly for the standpoint of not only the solo aspect, but for new players as well, is they outline combat on a card that can be handed out that goes into the sequence. So with a new player, it doesn't have to slow things down to where you have to explain to them the initiative phase again and what dice to roll for what. They can have this card to be able to go back to and look at and get them familiarized with how a round works, how the game is structured when it comes to combat, casting spells, so on and so forth. So I thought that was a very cool little touch that they put in there as well. The other cool thing is, potions you find and magical equipment, the card goes with the player, and then you have all the information you need right here on the card, so you don't have to spend the time writing it on your character sheet. Now, us older RPG players, we're going to do that, because if it's equipment we're going to use, we're going to put it on our sheets into our equipment, incorporate that into our characters, and use that. But I thought it was a nice touch. I really did. I thought that was a very cool idea and helped streamline things a bit. So let's talk about some of the things that I do like about 5th edition, and particularly for solo play. So I like the simplicity and the flow of 5th edition. The fact that it plays the way that I have always played D&D, relying more on my abilities and rolling with those unless it comes to a saving throw, but even they incorporate the saving throws back into the abilities, which I really like. It really goes back to the character, and it is able to, at that point, really emphasize the strength and the weakness of your character when it comes to that world, rather than having this overall matrix to where you look at saving throws in earlier versions and it just gives you a fixed number without giving any thought or reference to, well, is the character like, I don't know, Aragorn, to where he's this well-rounded, battle-hardened ranger that is able to take on a large group of orcs by himself and walked out pretty much unscathed? Or are we talking about the village novice here that's going to walk out that, well, still hasn't figured out which end of the sword to hold? So, but they all get the same saving throws, which is unbalanced, really. And I have to admit, with this edition, I enjoy that. I love that. The other thing they do that they incorporate with is leveling. So, in some of the earlier editions, it took you forever to advance from level to level. And I think for a lot of players, they would get frustrated with that because it would seem like it's taking so long to level up that they kind of lose interest with that, where other RPG systems out there will level quicker. Well, in D&D 5th, they've done that. It's very easy to level up from first to second level. Once you get about third level, things start to slow down a bit. At that point, you need to get more experience underneath your belt to advance to them other levels, which is fair. That makes sense to me. That really does. But I like the fact that it helps your character level up pretty quick. For you to get the first up to third level relatively quickly in a short amount of time, giving the player that sense of advancement and achievement, and watching those scores on their character sheets at that point increase, giving them more bonuses, which is just going to draw them more into the game, and they're going to feel more rewards from that because of that. I like that. I love that. And I have to say, 5th edition for solo play is excellent. It is very excellent, and I'm waiting for my main core rule books to show up here pretty soon. So that convinced me. It really did. It really did convince me to take a really good look at 5th edition and give it a really, really honest, good playthrough. And I have to admit, I am not disappointed. I'm in fact very happy with it. So for those of you out there watching this video that maybe you're just getting into the tabletop gaming hobby, or maybe you've played years ago and you're trying to get back into it and you don't kind of know where to start. Where should I start? Where should I, go to? Well, I have to admit, picking up this kit is not only going to get you up to speed with the current edition that's out there right now, but everything that you get in it is its own self-contained RPG system. You really don't need anything else other than that book to play this. And the nice thing is, it advances your characters up, I believe, to 5th level. I would have to take another look at that. But I believe character advancement is to 5th level with this book. Let me take a look at a character here. Oh, I'm sorry, 6th level. So this will take your characters from 1st to 6th level. So that gives you a lot of time to really dive into the D&D universe and get to know the Sword Coast in the realm of Neverwinter. And I'm pretty happy. I have to say, it's very cool. I'm really happy with the game set, and I think they did really well despite, some of the problems that Wizards of the Coast has had in the past. And I'm talking about 4th edition. A lot of people didn't like 4th edition. And to each their own. So let's venture back through time, if you will, and let's get into the other editions of D&D and talk about them a little bit and the changes of them. And this will help you make a really good determination as to what edition is actually right for you, whether you're playing solo or whether you plan to play in a large group with other people. So, going way, way, way back into the 80s here, and the very first, my introduction to the fantasy gaming world was this right here. Basic edition. And it says it all. It's basic. It's very basic, and you were limited because you just, at this point, had character classes. So your classes, as they followed, was you could be a human character class, which would be a cleric, a fighter, a magic user, or a thief. And then of course you had your demi-human classes, which would be a dwarf, an elf, or a halfling. Which is kind of funny how you see the changes through the editions, and we're going to get into that with the different races. But in basic, the different race was considered a demi-human, and it was a class of its own. Now, of course, the thing about basic D&D, which was cool, was if you chose the elf character, they were really the best character to play out of this system. For the fact that they could use a longbow, they could use a long sword, and they could hurl spells. What more could you want? I mean, a fighter that essentially that can wield a greatsword and cast magic missile on top of that. You can't ask for much more. The thing that was very unbalanced about the system is your magic user. The magic users in basic were extremely weak. I mean, we're talking very weak, like 4 hit points, and well, unless you had a large group to be able to protect them, it kind of made playing in a smaller group the wizard almost, until he achieved higher levels, as a, well, I'm just going to say, more or less of a problem to the group, really, because you're always having to worry about protecting this certain individual. But as he got more powerful and got access to more spells, he became very rude. So it was kind of like, how do I put this? Having a magical insurance policy. You have to pay in the beginning and pay and pay and pay, and you're not going to really reap many benefits from it. But as it goes along and levels go up, that's when you start to see where all that went, because the magic users become very, very rude. So, and the other thing about basic was the cleric. The cleric started out as, well, a priest, and didn't have any access to spells first level, which was pretty much kind of more or less of the realm of a fighter that could not use any ranged or sharpened weapons, only blunt weapons. So he could use a club or a mace, had to pray a lot, and that was pretty much about it. And then attaining levels from there on out, they were able to get their divine spells, where they could heal and be able to detect evil and turn undead, do all these other cool things that we now know of clerics. But in the basic system, they really didn't have access to those. Then of course you had your fighter. Your fighter has always been the tank of the group, and I think there's enough said about that. The thief, the halfling, and the dwarf, and it was very unique how D&D presented these characters. And a lot of people, I think, will associate it with the Tolkien Middle-earth type of atmosphere around it. And really, Basic Edition really isn't. It's really far away from that to where it's its own standalone system. Even though it feels reminiscent of Middle-earth, it's really not. And the cool thing about the system is it's so basic, it's so simple, that as playing solo, it's very easy to run a game solo with Basic Edition. The only problem is these books are way out of print, very expensive to get, and well, you can buy retro clones out in the market now for Basic Edition, and most of them have been updated to the most latest D20 mechanic system that kind of leaves these outdated and, well, a part of history, if you will. But I still love Basic Edition. It was the first game I learned how to play, and so there will always be that love there for it. And I think with a lot of people that's true with role-playing game systems. When you talk to people, the first role-playing game system that they really learned and had fun at is the system that they tend to gravitate towards and is their favorite system. They branch out and find other systems, but they always find themselves coming back to one particular system. And I think for a lot of people it's D&D. I know for me, it's D&D. Now, like I said, for the solo experience, here's one of the problems with basic D&D. When it comes to movement, movement, time, space is extremely vague in this system. And if you're just starting out into an RPG system, it's going to leave you confused, because really, basic at its very core is miniature skirmish with the medieval fantasy storytelling element to it. And you can really see it when you look at the encounters, because all the moves go in inches. They will tell you how many inches they move on the board, instead of feet in most modern role-playing games. So this will leave you somewhat confused, particularly if you're not familiar with miniatures and you've never really gotten into miniature skirmish and understand the rules for miniature play, and then you pick this book up. Movement's going to be kind of like, okay, alright. So, but all in all, if you enjoy a basic system, I would recommend reaching out and looking at some systems such as Basic Fantasy, The White Box, or Labyrinth Lord, which is one of my favorite Labyrinth Lords. Now let's talk about the thing about basic that had most people, some people very confused, other people were able to pick it up right away, and then you had the in-between that just straight up did not understand it. And that was their armor class system. So in all the editions moving forward from 3rd edition forward, we look at our AC number on our character sheet and our encounters, and it's going to give you a generated number from, we'll say, 10 all the way up to 20, 23, whatever. And we know with that number we have to roll the 20-sided, we have to add our bonuses and try to meet or exceed that number in order to be able to hit that opponent. It's a very simple concept to be able to understand and explain to new players, and it's easier to add up than it is at that point to subtract and round down and all these other things that go into it. Whereas with the earlier editions, that's what you had, because AC, Armor Class 0, was the best armor class you could have, which is equivalent to 20. But here was the thing, you would have an armor class of 3, and they would have these matrices that came with on your character sheet right here that you would have to follow to be able to know what number you had to have on your 20-sider in order to hit your opponent. So if your target had an AC of 5, you needed a 14 to be able to hit that creature. Now this is where the confusion came in this system. So what happens when your characters encounter an encounter that is a -2 AC? So no longer 0, they're -2. Well, there's only a 20 on a 20-sided, and if you don't have bonuses, how do you hit this creature? And it was very unbalanced. And as Basic eventually went into Advanced First Edition, they tried to really iron a lot of these out, but the question was still there, and the problem was still there. But with Advanced D&D, this is where we saw the beginning to where when you created a character, you had more character class options. Now, instead of just having a class, you also had a race that you could choose as well. And each race would give you particular bonuses or penalties to your character, giving you more customization ability there that you really didn't have before in Basic Edition, which is really cool. And Advanced D&D is, I have to say, still one of my favorite systems. The fact that there's enough sophistication to it, we're going to say, as far as tabletop role-playing games go, to where it is a very satisfying game, but yet it's still simple enough to where it's very easy to run solo. But you still have that whole entire old system with the AC 0. And there was an easy formula that I came up with that I use when I play the older editions that's very simple. So you look at the target number. Let's say it's 5. So you add up, 5 plus 5 will make 10. So you add another 10 to that and you're going to have 15. So you got an AC 5, right? You add 5 more, you got 10. So you're going to add 5 plus 10, you'll have 15, and then minus the level of your character. So if we're at 15 and I got a second level character, it's now going to drop to 15, 14, 13, to where the target number is 13. So I got to roll a 13 or better on my 20-sider in order to hit that particular target. And that's the way that I've always ran Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and it seems to iron out a lot of stuff, make it run pretty smooth. Now, as far as Advanced D&D goes, you can still find these books. They're getting harder to find now because they've been on, these were out in the 80s, and they're slowly, at that point, going away. And a lot of people that are now buying these are collectors, particularly people who maybe are feeling nostalgic. Other people is for the art. And the earlier versions of D&D had some of the best art out there at the time, considering you had just such huge names for art, such as Elmore. And I mean, some of these, Elmore and Easily, and I can't remember all their names, but oh man, some of these pictures that they would put on the covers and inside the books, you could sit and look at them and just imagine actually being in this living, breathing world. And because of that, a lot of these original works of art are now sought out by a lot of art dealers and collectors who are looking to put them into their collections. So for a lot of people, some of these books have nothing to do with the game content inside of them, but more of what's on the front of them. And I have to say that's my thing about Advanced, that I like about Advanced. Now, a lot of people who still play 2nd edition D&D and still use 2nd edition a lot. And 2nd edition I played the heck out of for a long time and loved it. But the one thing people, I have to say, loathed about 2nd edition was the THAC0 system. So THAC0 is the acronym for 2-hit armor class 0. Based off of the formula I gave you earlier is THAC0 in a nutshell. So how the THAC0 system was set up was, as your character advanced in levels and became stronger, at that point their THAC0 score, in order to hit their opponents, would begin to go down because they're becoming more experienced, they're becoming stronger and healthier, and all these other things for their character is increasing, and that's reflected into their world. But for a lot of people, it was just a state of confusion. So, whereas of you have to take this number and subtract it, round this down, and go through this little equation to be able to come up with the number you have to roll on your 20-sided. Now, I have to say, this type of gaming, once you get used to that math and that mind thought, it's actually a very cool game to play, and there's a lot to it that I really enjoy. Particularly Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition is where we saw the introduction of proficiencies, where it was where the thought of skills in your character having proficiency at a particular weapon more so than the other, giving them bonuses, was first introduced into gaming, because before that it was just assumed that if your character had a sword, he was basically proficient at that sword. He understood how to use that sword. Whereas in 2nd edition, they went further with that. Your character was proficient, but it also had a speed factor to it. So it reflected the heavier the weapon, at that point, the longer it would take to line that weapon up to be able to deliver an attack. And the smaller the weapon, like a dagger, the quicker it was. And this all went back to the initiative, how fast a character would react into the combat round. So it gave you, at that point, more options to be able to really finely detail your character, more so than advanced D&D. Now you had the point to where you could get a fighting class, and depending on your weapon chosen and your proficiency you took, you could make a relatively very rude character pretty quickly. Given the fact that rangers at that point, as they went up in level, could do 2-weapon fighting, and they could wield 2 swords and be a whirlwind of death, which is really cool. The cool thing about, I have to say, 2nd to advanced D&D is the systems were compatible. That was the cool thing about it. So you could play by the new rule set, and you could still get the old modules from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and play them, and they're really, besides a few minuscule changes basically to the module, they're very compatible, and really not a whole lot had to be done in order to use the two, which made it nice, and I think a lot of people enjoyed that. But that was during the TSR days, and when Wizards of the Coast at that point purchased TSR, things began to take a radical change in D&D. That's when we saw 3rd edition. I love 3rd edition. I absolutely loved it. Some people, I can't say that I really met anybody that hated 3rd edition. I think everybody really took something away from 3rd edition that they actually liked. They streamlined the rules. They made it, the battle system, more simple to understand. Now we've seen these ACs that was like AC 13. Okay, roll your 20-sider, take that number, add your attack bonus to that number, and if it meets or exceeds that number, now you've hit your opponent, and you roll your damage, and you add at that point any other bonuses you would have with your damage. So it was a really cool changing point. A lot of people were able to comprehend D&D, and this is a real turning point for D&D, because it was at this point that D&D started to get very popular and started to grow immensely compared to the following it had before. Whereas of the following it had before, I'm not going to say it was not huge, because it was. There was a huge following for D&D. But you had this how do I put this? This myth attached to the game that you either had to be a complete brain with a huge IQ, or you had to have made a pact with the devil, or you had to be part of this weird socially out of touch group in order to understand and play this game, which was far from the truth. It really wasn't. It was just that it was very hard, I think, for a lot of people to be able to really grasp the thought behind the mass system for the combat. And when D&D changed that and went to the D20 mechanic system they have now, that really changed a lot. And a lot of those old thoughts towards RPG systems went to the wayside, and it's become an extremely popular game, enjoyed by a lot of people these days. Now, if you're like me and you started out in the hobby when you were young, and you progressed through the additions and the rule changes and everything, you understand and you can sit back and you can appreciate some of the stuff that they added to it that made it cool, and some of the stuff that just really didn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's get into 3rd edition a little bit and talk about this. And the reason why I'm explaining my video, I'm going through the editions and I'm talking about them a little bit so you could be a little bit more well informed if you decide to get into any particular edition of D&D, particularly for solo play. You're already going to know what you're getting into before you even get the books and open them. So 3rd edition was the change. It was the huge change. It changed everything with tabletop RPGs. It changed, I'm going to say, the gaming industry as a whole, because now at this point we had this thing called open game licensing, to where you can make any game, any genre, anything you can think of. You could publish that and put that out there, just so long as it is able to be 100% compatible with the rules in this book. You're good to go. And we saw the birth of a lot of game systems come out of that, a lot of cool game systems, and oh my god, so many different books and settings and everything to actually play in, that it was almost overwhelming for the player, because you had so many options that you did not have before that you had available to you now. The thing that was cool about 3rd edition, they made character creation, how do I put this? They tried to make it simple, but there were some things that were kind of vaguely described in there. And you would have to read that section several times before you kind of like, okay, I understand what you're, trying to explain. The abilities were simple, but when you came down to the skills, where a lot of people would get confused, was you take your intelligence modifier and then you times that by 4, and then you get this number, and then if you put 1 rank in a skill, you get this bonus depending on how many ranks you put in, but you're limited to how many ranks per level you can put in. So you got to divvy these ranks up and spread them across your skills, which gives you even more skill. So the skill section was a little kind of like, huh? And it, at first, I think threw a lot of people off. Once you understood that you can select any skill that you want available to your character. Now, when you put a rank into that skill, it's at that point that skill becomes way more useful to you as far as the bonus goes on the roll, compared to a skill that does not have a rank in it. So it was in your best interest to really look over the skills that pertain to your character class, choose wisely as to what you put your ranks, because the skills were referred back to a lot in 3rd edition. You use skills quite often. Everything from hiding in shadows to the point of stalking enemies, so on and so forth. You relied on the skill to see how your character actually carried out that particular action. Now, the other thing that it went into were feats. Feats were cool for the fact that as your character advanced in level, you would gain a feat. Feats would give you permanent bonuses to your character, but there were limitations. You have prerequisites to where maybe you have to gain 3 feats first before you can get this feat over here that you really want. It's just gonna make your character extremely rude and level everything in its path. But it would take you a while of leveling that character up and attaining these before you could really get to that. So it was one of those checks and balances put into the game system. Now, 3rd edition, I have to say, is excellent. Excellent system. I love the combat. I love the way it's laid out. Everything about it really made solo playing, it made it more complicated in the fact that you had the skills to deal with and the feats and remembering all these bonuses and all this other additional math that went into it. But the combat, the flow of combat, made everything much simpler. It was just so much easier to understand, and rather than having to use this mathematical formula, now you could just roll, add a few numbers, check it against the AC, and everything moved much more smoother. It was way more streamlined. And I really did love 3rd edition. Now, Wizards of the Coast said, wait a minute, there were problems with 3rd edition that they wanted to iron out. And particularly they made adjustments to the Ranger, giving them access to spells at lower levels, and they made a couple adjustments to the Monk, considering the smart people figured out that if you took the Monk class, and I would have to look at the feat because it was explained to me, and it was one of those things you would really, if you were a gaming rules lawyer and you really look over this and read everything, you would pick it up right away. And what it was is you could take this particular character along with the feat, you could permanently freeze time inside the game world, and then at that point take as many attacks as you wanted. Well, that gives an unfair advantage to everybody else at the table, and pretty boring considering your character is able to freeze time and go through and kill everything on the board, not giving any of the other players a chance. So everybody's just sitting there watching this guy. So they went through and they ironed out them details, and they came out with 3.5. Now, this is funny because it was the beginning of what I call the Edition Wars, where people at that point have drawn lines in the sand and they have decided to take sides, proclaiming this edition is better than that edition, and if you like this edition, that means, you know. Anyways, so when 3.5 came out, a lot of people enjoyed 3.5. They loved 3.5. They ate it up. They ran out. They bought the rule books. They bought all the supplements and absolutely loved it. It had a huge following to it. For me, I picked up the 3.5 book, I looked through it, and I seen the subtle changes that they had made to the system, but I like 3rd edition more, so I just stuck with 3rd edition, and I used 3.5 as more or less as just a reference, because really considering it's the same book, just with a few rule changes to some character classes to iron some details out. But that's where the edition war began. Because you had the people who said 3.5 was better than 3rd edition. You had the people who played 3rd edition that said the people who play 3.5 don't understand, they're just a bunch of whiners and they don't enjoy hardcore gaming. So then he went to 3.5 and it went back and forth. And I just found it all kind of funny and silly from there on out. And then 3.5, as they were getting ready to phase that out, a new game system came out on the market made by Paizo Publishing called, dang it, Pathfinder. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. Pathfinder, which was glorified 3.5 edition, and a lot of people loved it, and a lot of people who were diehard D&D fans transferred over to Pathfinder and have settled to Pathfinder. And pretty much that's where they live at this point, loving everything about it. But as the way marketing schemes and everything goes, well, 3rd edition was such a huge success, it brought a lot to Wizards of the Coast. So what would be better than 3rd edition or 3.5 edition than a 4th edition? They released 4th edition, and it's a decent edition. I bought the books, I have read through this, and created a character. And I have to say, for solo play, 4th edition isn't really an edition maybe I would be my go-to edition. But I have to admit, the thing about 4th edition that's really cool, if you enjoy miniature skirmish and you enjoy setting up the terrain and putting the miniatures out there, and you and your friends enjoy that type of gaming, and maybe you want to take it to the next level and add more detail and more story behind that, 4th edition would be an excellent game system for that. 4th edition really, I have to say, has more in common with basic 1st edition than any of the other editions, just for the fact that there's a lot of emphasis on miniature combat and movement on the board, which is cool, and I enjoy it. And I know a lot of people hated 4th edition for the fact that when they made the change and you looked at the diagrams and you looked at the art in the book, for most part it felt very video gaming. And I think for a lot of people who enjoy the tabletop experience, to be able to utilize their imagination, because let's face it, the most scary monsters you will ever encounter are not the ones out there, they're the ones in our head. Those are going to be the most frightening. So for a lot of people, this was kind of like Wizards of the Coast trying to, is the way, and this is my opinion, this is just my opinion on this edition, so take that as it is, was the fact that they were trying to branch out to the ever-growing online gaming community that was now playing a lot of dungeon crawlers online out there, and trying to get them back to the tabletop. So they set this up to be more appealing to them, but it was not received by the original fans of D&D, I think, the way that they intended it to be. And of all editions, it really did tank, and it did not do too well. And basically 4th edition at that point phased out into history with the other editions. Now, there's still a large following that enjoy and play 4th edition a lot. And I don't really get into the edition wars things. I know a lot of people do, and some people just have an absolute hatred for this edition or that edition. And I mean, there were Facebook groups I was part of, this is years ago, that there would be people literally arguing and threatening physical harm to other people because they enjoyed this particular edition. And I was like, this is just so stupid. And I was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here. And yeah, left those pages way behind and those people with that mindset. So if at one point you have to realize that you're playing a game. You're playing a game that we love, but at the end of the day, it's a game. That's all it is. And so yeah, that caused a lot of issues. But summing this video up, because I covered a lot about D&D and a lot of the different editions, kind of give you a little bit of background on them so you have an idea of kind of what you're jumping into. But before I really sum that all up, I think I need to give 5th edition a little bit more in-depth and insightfulness on that. So let's talk about 5th edition, the things that have changed I've noticed. Now, I have not got my main core rule book yet. I'm going off this basic set that I have here, but some of the things that have changed that I really, really do enjoy. So with 5th edition, they have implemented the advantage and disadvantage, which works extremely well with solo play. The mindset behind this is if your character has an advantage, and let's use this example, you have a thief class character. He is at that point closing in on his target, and he's going to take his dagger and he's going to, right between the shoulder blades, put that encounter out and be able to sneak in and get the prize. Now, he would have advantage considering he's hidden in the shadows, and he would roll 2 d20s, taking the highest roll and then adding that to his head, which is really cool. I really do like that, and I think that's an awesome feature of 5th edition. I really do enjoy that rule change because it gets back into the way that I game when I game solo with my characters, particularly when the way I look at it, when you game solo, you have to run both sides. You got to run the encounters, you got to run your characters, and there is that element of you have to be fair and you have to keep everything fair. And sometimes, well, those encounters can be just extremely rude and decimate your characters fairly quickly. So there's always the mindset or the thought of fudging numbers to be able to keep things going, but that takes away the fun from it, and it takes away a lot of the story elements that are driven by the events that happen from that. So I will use the 2d20 system, and I'll roll those, taking the highest of the 2 rolls. Now, some people may say, well, that's cheating. It's really, actually, it's not cheating. What it is the way I view my characters and my world is they're heroic characters, and they're like a step above the normal population. There's something about these people that is special that makes them what they are and puts them in the positions that they are in. So the best way I can explain this would be, it would like be the difference of taking the guitarist that maybe has 1 month of experience underneath his belt and expecting him to perform like Eddie Van Halen. It's just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. He's not gonna be able to achieve that skill set in a short amount of time to compare to what this man has accomplished over his lifetime. So, just using that as an example. So I really enjoy that about the advantage in the D&D. Now you also have disadvantage. So if your character at that point failed a saving throw, or your character has now, well, let's say that sneak attack didn't work, and as he went to go give the blow, he tripped over his own feet, falling. So now the whole entire sneak element is out the window. So now that particular encounter gets an attack on him, and of course you're going to want to save your character from impending doom. But now you're going to roll with a disadvantage. So you're going to roll 2 d20s, taking the lowest roll. And I have to say, I really enjoy that game mechanic. I really do. The other thing that I like about 5th edition, what they have changed, and I said this in the beginning of the video, is the fact that you really have to rely on your abilities more for your saves and your skills, rather than having this ability numbers over here from character creation that just give you these bonuses, and then moving on from there, they're really not used, which I always found, you know, it's always bothered me about some RPG systems how they do that, and it makes you wonder, what is the point of rolling and spending all the time creating this if we're never going to reference back to it or ever use it? But 5th edition really focuses on that, and I love that. The fact that your saves and your skills and everything go right back to that specific ability. Now, you've seen that in 3rd edition, and you've also seen that in every edition moving forward, to where your skills are very, very heavily influenced by your particular ability. But not to the point as 5th edition, to where the basic set I'm using right here and playing out of, how all skills are available to all characters. But it's just going to depend if you're proficient in that particular skill or not, but it's still available to you, and you can still get a chance to roll. So let's sum this all up, and there's something else I want to talk about here before I end this video, and some of you may know about, some of you may not. So let's talk about the additions and sum this up, because this has been a pretty long video. I talked quite a bit about D&D, a little bit longer than I actually really wanted to, and I just want to sum everything up to be able to give you a good idea if you decide to get into the solo end of this and you want to venture into the humongous world of D&D. So, basic edition. Basic, hence its name. Character creation is going to be simple. Everything about this is extremely simple. The one thing that's going to, at that point, confuse you is going to be the movement. So if you decide to use a basic system, I would highly recommend that you read up on miniature skirmish, particularly movement on the battlefield for miniatures. Once you have that foundational understanding in your mind, when you pick this up and you read through it, movement is going to make a lot more sense to you, and your game's going to flow more smoother, rather than sitting there in a confused state wondering what the hell are they talking about. Advanced D&D, the good old advanced. So if you are a Tolkien fan and you enjoy Middle-earth and you enjoy that feeling of Middle-earth, and you want to find a game system that really does give you the ability to be able to create and play in that setting, but you don't want, how do I put this? You want to have a Middle-earth, maybe Tolkien setting, but that's not so drenched in it to where at that point you are kind of caged into this framework of the War of the Ring and the Hobbit and all that, but you just want the overall game feel and style, I'd recommend Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. This edition, out of all editions, has always felt that way to me. When you play it, it feels very Middle-earthy. It feels in that era of Middle-earth, to where maybe it's just because it's the older game feel to it is what it is, and I understand that it's not Middle-earth. And when this book was written, I'm sure there was an influence of J.R.R. Tolkien into this work, but it's not J.R.R. Tolkien's work. But what I can say is, if you are looking to get into solo gaming, you want to get into a D&D that's pretty flexible, but give you some of that overall Tolkien feel. Advanced D&D is going to be the edition you're probably going to want to look into, and really, you don't even have to buy this. You can get into, I would suggest, Basic Fantasy or Labyrinth Lord. Really, Labyrinth Lord is a good one. Labyrinth Lord, by far, is the one game system that I've seen out there that has really captured Advanced D&D from the original writings and everything, and has presented it in such an awesome way that preserved it. And I have to just give 2 thumbs up to Labyrinth Lord for doing that. So, if you're looking to get into a more of a Tolkien type of feel, Middle-earthy type of feel game that you want to add into that, check out Advanced D&D. Okay, so if you're looking to have more in-depth character features, and you really want a game system that is story driven, you really want a game system to where weighs more heavy on story than it really does with game mechanics, but your characters, depending on how you select your proficiencies and weapons and so forth for your characters, is going to really impact the effect of the story and how it goes along. I would suggest you check out 2nd edition D&D. 2nd edition D&D it's a great system. It really is. And I have to say, if you want an old school gaming feel, that's going to give you a lot of options, and going to, at that point, give your just overall imagination the ability to be able to create vast worlds and populate them with a lot of horrible encounters and everything you can think of. 2nd edition is going to be the edition for you, considering that there's still a lot of this out there in print. You can still get 2nd edition at a reasonable price. And not only that, all of the, I'm going to say, the added modules and everything else that they have put out there for 2nd edition, and there's so much out there that can really help you, from Ravenloft to the Greyhawk settings and so on and so forth, that this is a really cool story-driven system. And if you're that type of solo player, you want theater of the mind, you want more story-driven, you want that type of game, check out 2nd edition. It's worth learning the THAC0. Once you get the THAC0 down and you understand those simple little rule changes, and you can wrap your mind around that particular formula, you will love this game system. So I'm going to put it this way: if you want a more modern D&D system, you want something that's got an older feel to it, but you want something that's pretty simple, but might, I can't really say simple because it's not, but you want something that's a little bit more of a challenge for solo RPG. Maybe something that's going to challenge you and give you more, how would I put this? I'm just going to leave it at more of a challenge for the tabletop experience, to where you're more immersed in the bonuses and penalties and really focusing on that. Check out 3rd edition. 3rd edition will be the best for you. Believe it or not, 3rd edition is getting a little harder to find these days, and I don't know if that's by choice of Wizards of the Coast trying to just phase it out because they have 4th edition they're trying to recover from, and now 5th edition that's launched, or if it's just the fact that a lot of the people that love 3rd edition have just been buying up all the books and materials that they can get their hands on to put them into their own libraries. But I can say 3rd edition is a really awesome system. I think any D&D system is awesome, to be honest with you, but this was the change. This was it's a very good system. It was very well thought out and works very well. 3.5, I'm not going to really get into 3.5 a whole lot. D&D 3.5 or Pathfinder really doesn't matter. As far as the rules go, you can check it out. Honestly, when it comes to Pathfinder, I really don't like Pathfinder or 3.5. It just feels a little too clunky to me, and that's why I choose not to use it. So I'm just going to leave that right there. Maybe there's other people out there that would disagree with me, and but yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. 3.5 and Pathfinder, you know, that would be a system you'd have to explore and check out for yourself. Like I said, feels very clunky to me. It feels as if it's way more complex than it really has to be. But hey, that's my opinion. Some people enjoy that type of gaming and they love that type of challenge to it. So if you're that type of gamer and you want a very complex system, you should check out 3.5 or Pathfinder and jump into that and see if that works out for you. Okay, 4th edition. 4th edition is really good for you know, skirmish, for miniatures, and you know, I've said that since I've read through this book and looked through it. It's a cool system. You know, just like any other D&D system out there, but it does, like I said, of all the editions, 4th edition is the edition that kind of leaves the player wanting more. More unless it feels more like trying to duplicate a video game rather than the tabletop gaming experience. But if you enjoy miniatures and you want to take your miniature game to the next level and introduce more RPG aspects to it, 4th edition will probably be a good edition for you. And then of course 5th edition. 5th edition, I think so far, you know, looking through it, if you're getting into solo play and you want to start up playing RPG solo, 5th edition is worth looking into, and I have to admit I am quite pleasantly surprised by it, and surprised at how smooth it runs and the game aspects and how everything actually is set up. It was a very well thought out system, and they ironed out a lot of kinks, and they kept some of those aspects that I enjoyed about 2nd edition I can see in 5th edition and Basic. They melted all the editions together and made a really, really good edition. Let's just hope that this edition is not going to go away anytime soon, and they're going to try to tank it and bring out another edition that may flop like 4th. We hope not. But so I hope that helps when it comes to D&D and solo experiences. depending on where to start, where to jump in, which edition you want to play, overall I would have to say, in my honest opinion, if you are just getting into solo playing and you want to get into D&D and playing, just go straight to 5th. Why? It's in publication. It's easy to get a hold of. The books are reasonably priced and you can get everything. The older editions, you may enjoy the rule changes and everything like that, but you have to remember, the older the edition and the further back you go, the harder the books are going to be to come by and the more money people are going to want. So perhaps a set that cost $20 back in the day when it was released, now you want a brand new set still in the cellophane, not opened, you're looking in the neighborhood of about $200 to $2,500 for that. $2,000 to $2,500, not $2. Okay, with that out of the way, I got one last thing I want to talk about with D&D. So there has been one module that has always eluded me, even when I started out in the basic D&D days and went into the advanced. I've seen this particular module, but it was just like the stars wouldn't align right. Either didn't have the money, the store refused to sell it, or it was just too expensive, so on and so forth. There was always some reason why I was never able to get my hands on this book. And as the way things would be, at that point it slipped into gaming history, into the darkness, until recently. So one of the most iconic game modules for D&D out there of all time, that is so huge that Wizards of the Coast actually made their own board game about it, called the Temple of Elemental Evil. So I had recently learned, and if you're looking for this particular module, and I have to say, it is tough. It is very tough. I broke out the first edition, made the characters, ran them through. They made it through the village of Hamlet, normal. They got to the boathouse. I was able to get past the, I don't want to ruin it too much for you here, was able to get past the giant frogs at that point, hiding in the weeds, entered the moat house, and upon the second room was killed by the giant spider. Getting back to them editions, which is a better edition for you to play. So in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the way poison works is if you get bit, you roll your saving throw. If you fail your saving throw, you die. End of story. Dead. Gone. All three of my characters failed their saving throw, and yeah, all of them were dead. So I'd have to start that over again. But I have to admit, RPG Now is offering a printed version of this book. It can be yours for about 25 bucks. And you too can hold this original print in your hands. Now the cool thing is, all the maps, the original game came with maps that were separated from the book that you could lay out on the table and use, whereas with this you're not going to get that. They're actually towards the back of the book, and they are all printed on the pages. Honestly, for me, that I don't care about that, but I have to say, having this and being able to go through the Temple of Elemental Evil is, I am extremely excited. So unfortunately, the first run didn't go good, and I figured I would, you know, give it a little bit of time and go back through that again. Now, before I end this video, because I know this has been a long video, it's been very long-winded, I've talked about a lot about D&D and different editions, which edition may be right for you solo or for a group. The last thing I want to talk about is using these modules. Now, I never really got into modules. I was always do home brews. And recently, because of time constraints, I started getting into modules and trying to figure out how to use these solo. And, well, I found a way that I personally use it that I actually enjoy it. And I'm going to share some of those ideas with you right now. So with any module you get, it's pre-written, and unfortunately you are the player and the game master at the same time. So you're going to have to read through it to get the overall idea how the module flows, how the story works, and the overall flow of the encounters into the game. So it's going to be spoiled for you from there. But if you look at it from this aspect, if you read through it, you get the idea of the module, how the module is supposed to operate and be ran, which is going to give you, as a solo RPGist, the knowledge you need to be able to run this module correctly. But what it is not going to change at all are the encounters, the outcome of them encounters, and how those are going to alter the storyline one way or another. Now, when it comes to the sections, if you ever look and when you go through a module, it's going to break everything up by a numbering system. I'm going to give you an example. If I can find a decent sized map here to be able to show you this. Okay. So, right here, if you were to zoom in on the actual temple right there, and you can see those areas all broken up, and they've been given a number that you can go back to at that point in the module and look at that particular room, and it's going to tell you its contents, what to expect inside of there, and how, if you were the game master, you should be able to run that for the characters. So what I will do is I will look at that particular heading and I will skim through it. And this is the interesting way how I will do this. What I'm looking for are the key points. How many encounters are in there? What are their stats? What do I need to know about the encounters? How to set up the room? When it comes to actually running it, maybe the way that it was written, to where there's a particular dungeon feature or something like that. If it's very important, pertains to the story, then of course I will use it. If it doesn't, I throw it out, I get out my random tables, and I add in my own stuff, which works out very well and adds a twist to that module and that game, which gives me, how do I put this, some enjoyment. Because to give you a good example, I ran through my 5th edition set here, and I went through the Temple of Talos, or I'm sorry, the lighthouse that had a temple built to Talos in there, the evil storm god. So the first encounter was this giant crab. Well, you know, I'm remembering in my head back to the Temple of Elemental Evil, the giant frogs, killing these things, one of my characters being swallowed by it and having to take a dagger and cut the stomach open to get back out, so on and so forth. So I'm like, man, this is a crab, this is horrible. So formulated this idea, and I didn't look at the module, I just looked at the encounter that was there. I didn't read the heading or anything. So my cleric had casted light upon the arrow that my thief was using, shot the arrow into this thing because it's at night. It hit this damn crab, so now it lit the crab up. So now it's got this light around it that is almost blinding it. It's got this bright light above it, so it can't see really into the darkness because it's messing with its eyesight. which seemed like an excellent idea. It was at that point that my fighter jumped in and just decimated this crab. That was it. Done. And I was like, yeah. So moved on to the second part. And it wasn't until I actually read that heading that the crab was supposed to be this friendly encounter that I was supposed to get all this information out of as to what was where and so on and so forth. So I was kind of laughing to myself, but at the same time I wasn't, because it was cool when the adventure was over. Compared to my experience in the way that I ran through it, compared to the way that they wrote it, was completely different, and it was a new experience altogether. So if you use one of these modules, it's the way that I would explain to you how to do that. As you go through, when it comes to the descriptions, unless it's a key element to the game that has to be used for this storyline, throw it out, add your own in. Shake things up a little bit, break out some random tables, and add some chaos to the order to see how things actually break. And you're going to sit back and be like, wow, because it's going to be completely different compared to the way that it was, I think the game designer envisioned it and intended it to go. Now, is it going to change the entire game flow? Not really, because you're still following that progression through the storyline. Those encounters are still the same. Everything is still going to be the same. Which is going to be different is, instead of using everything as the way the word was written, you're going to be putting a tweak on things, and at that point adding your own, we'll say, chaos to the structure to have fun with it. So I hope this helps, folks. I just wanted to get out there, I wanted to talk to you great people, and get a video up. And I think at that, it's time for me to end this video, get some more coffee, and well, get back to doing some gaming and doing all that. So if you liked the video, click the like button, and if you have not subscribed, please click the subscribe button, followed by the bell icon. Every time I upload a new video, you're going to hear about it. Alright folks, this is Artichoke Dip, signing off.